A jolt tore through the air, the crackle of electricity lashing against human flesh. A man staggered, his body crumpling to the pavement, his white cane scattering across the asphalt. Cars halted in confusion, tires screeching against the crosswalk where he lay convulsing. A police officer stood above him, taser still in hand, breathing hard as if he had just conquered a threat. But the man at his feet was no threat. He was blind, he was a veteran, and all he had been doing was crossing the street. The silence afterward was heavier than the fall itself. A few gasps escaped from the small crowd at the corner. Some raised phones, uncertain whether to record or to help. Yet nobody stepped forward. The officer barked something about compliance, about safety protocols, words that rang hollow against the sight of a man whose eyes, clouded by blindness, had already paid a greater price than most could imagine. He did not protest. He could not. His silence was louder than every order thrown at him. His name was Samuel Reeves, though no one there spoke it. To them, he was just a stranger writhing on hot pavement. Cane snapped in two like a broken bone. Yet behind his silence lay decades of service, of deserts and storms, of comrades buried in foreign soil. His left hand trembled, not from fear but from the memory of holding onto a rifle through nights colder than death. He could still smell the acrid smoke of burning oil fields, still hear the metallic snap of distant gunfire, still feel the sand that stung his skin like glass. A roadside explosion had taken most of his sight years ago. What had left him was a world of shadows and muted light, a world where the cane in his hand became his eyes. That cane now lay useless at his side. Samuel had come home to a nation that clapped for soldiers at airports, but often turned away from them in grocery lines, that cheered at parades but left many to wander streets without shelter. He rarely asked for help. He had learned in war that silence was sometimes the only armor a man could wear. Today, silence was all he carried as well. The officer shouted again, insisting Samuel had ignored commands. Witnesses shifted uneasily, but no one contradicted the uniform. A woman in a red dress clutched her child's hand tighter, whispering that they should stay out of it. A man in a business suit checked his watch and walked the other direction. Phones rose higher, recording, yet no voice came to Samuel's defense. The city kept moving, indifferent. Samuel lay still now, breathing through pain. The electricity had scorched his muscles, but he made no plea. The silence unsettled. The officer more than defiance might have. The veteran's calm seemed to accuse him in a way no words could. His body trembled, but his face was composed, almost serene, as though he had endured worse storms than this. Because he had. Minutes stretched long. A siren wailed in the distance, then faded. The officer paced, muttering into his radio. Cars honked impatiently, their drivers irritated at the blockade. The crowd whispered, some wondering aloud why the man wasn't resisting, others muttering that maybe he had done something wrong after all. The seed of doubt sprouted quickly when watered by authority. But 7 minutes later, the street itself seemed to shift. From the distance came a low, unbroken rumble, a vibration that tremored through the soles of every bystander's feet. Heads turned toward the horizon, where a line of olive-drab vehicles approached, their formation precise, unyielding. A convoy, military, unmistakable, rolled steadily down the road. The officer froze, uncertainty flickering across his face. Samuel did not move, though beneath his quiet composure, he felt the ground shake with a rhythm he knew well. The convoy slowed as it neared the intersection. Engines idled with a patience that felt deliberate, almost ceremonial. Then they stopped, blocking the road entirely. Doors opened, boots struck asphalt. Soldiers stepped out, their posture rigid, their silence profound. They did not shout, they did not threaten, they merely stood, forming a barrier of flesh and discipline between Samuel and the officer who had struck him down. The air changed. The murmurs of the crowd died into reverent stillness. Phones lowered. Even the impatient honking ceased. There was no mistaking what was unfolding. Honor manifesting itself, not in speeches or slogans, but in the silent weight of brothers and sisters who would not let one of their own lie broken at the feet of disrespect. A sergeant among them bent down, lifting Samuel's cane from the pavement, brushing away the grit with deliberate care, as though it were a metal instead of a stick of painted wood. He placed it gently in Samuel's hand. Samuel's fingers curled around it, trembling slightly, but his grip was firm. His lips parted, and his voice, low and steady, carried across the hushed street. "I have carried worse burdens in silence," he said. "But silence does not mean I walk alone." The words cut sharper than any blade. They did not accuse, did not rage, but they echoed with the weight of sacrifice and quiet dignity. The officer shifted back a step, eyes darting between the silent ranks of soldiers and the man he had tased. His authority seemed to shrink in the presence of honor so unshakable. A soldier stepped forward, not to confront, but to stand beside Samuel, offering his arm. Samuel rose slowly, leaning on both the cane and the strength of comrades who had returned for him. His knees wavered, but his back remained straight. He did not look at the officer. He looked ahead, through a world he could no longer see, with the same steady calm that had once led him through deserts and fire. The crowd that had been silent out of fear now grew silent out of respect. Some lowered their heads. A child pulled free from her mother's grip and saluted with small, uncertain fingers. The mother did not stop her this time. The moment needed no explanation. The officer muttered about procedure, about misunderstanding, but no one listened. The convoy did not move. They simply stood, their silence heavier than any verdict. In that silence, justice became visible. Samuel's voice rose once more, not loud but clear enough to carry. Respect costs nothing, but without it, a nation loses everything. The line lingered in the air, as enduring as the flag on a battlefield. It was a truth too simple to argue with, too deep to dismiss. When Samuel took his first step forward, cane tapping softly against the ground, the soldiers moved with him. They did not march. They walked in quiet unison, their presence both shield and honor guard. The officer stepped aside, no longer in control of the moment. The power had shifted, not through violence, but through dignity, through the unshakable presence of men and women who understood what sacrifice truly meant. Bystanders who had hesitated before now lifted their phones, not to mock or exploit, but to capture a moment that felt larger than themselves. Some whispered apologies into the still air, though Samuel did not turn to hear them. His silence was not contempt, it was grace. When the convoy finally moved again, engines roaring back to life, they did so only after Samuel had crossed the street, steady, unbroken, carried by a dignity no taser could scorch. The vehicles rolled forward slowly, deliberately, as though to remind every witness that respect was not optional, that honor was not a courtesy, but a debt. Long after the last vehicle disappeared into the distance, the silence remained. People stood as though rooted in place, unwilling to be the first to break the spell. Then, one by one they dispersed, their lives returning to routine, yet something within them changed. They had seen what silence could do, how it could expose injustice more clearly than rage, how it could gather strength until it moved mountains or convoy. For Samuel, the world returned to shadows and fragments of light. But in those shadows, he carried the knowledge that his steps had not gone unnoticed, that his silence had spoken for countless others who could not be heard. And as the memory of tasers and broken canes lingered, so too did the vision of soldiers standing in perfect stillness, a line between dishonor and dignity. It was a reminder that even when unseen, respect must be lived, not demanded. Because in the end, the measure of a nation is not how it treats its most powerful, but how it treats the ones who walk with canes, who carry scars, who have given sight, blood, or peace of mind, so others can cross the street in safety. The story settled into those who witnessed it, and into those who would hear it later, carried across screens and whispers, sparking questions about silence, about respect, about the quiet strength that refuses to bow even under assault. And to those listening now, the question remained: will we stand silent, complicit, when dignity is stripped away? Or will we be the convoy that blocks the road, that stands unyielding in honor of those who walked before us? If this story reached your heart, share where you are watching from. Share your thoughts on what dignity means to you. And if you believe in remembering the silent heroes who walk among us, join us here for more stories that will not let them be forgotten.